All right, elders, welcome. If you're getting ready for the 53rd General Assembly, you are in the right place. We've put together this briefing to help you navigate all the business that's about to come your way.
So, you've probably heard there are over 75 overtures hitting the floor. Yeah, that's a lot. And it can definitely feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose, right? So our goal here is to boil it all down for you. We're going to distill everything into the major strategic trends so you can walk in there, understand what's at stake, and vote with real confidence.
If there is one single idea you need to grab onto to make sense of this entire assembly, it's this one. This quote from the Legislative Impact Report just nails it. We are seeing a massive, decisive, strategic push to move away from what they call procedural flexibility, relying on a little discretion and trust, and moving towards constitutional high fidelity. And what does that mean? Well, it means clear, codified, uniform rules for everybody.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll dig into that big shift to high fidelity. Then, we'll cover standardizing the judicial process, enhancing governance, defining church offices and roles, and reforming local church polity. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at the key question that's really facing the whole assembly.
Okay, let's jump right in. This whole idea of high fidelity, what does it actually look like on the ground? Well, it really breaks down into 5 major trajectories. And honestly, these 5 things are the engine behind almost every single overture you're going to encounter.
So here they are. You've got judicial standardization, more oversight and transparency, getting real specific on church officers, beefing up academic rigor, and protecting congregational governance. Think of these as the big currents running under the surface of everything. If you can keep these 5 themes in your head, you'll have the context for pretty much every vote you cast.
All right, first up, standardizing the judicial process. This is all about getting rid of the gray areas. The big push here is to create what lawyers call bright line rules. The idea is to make things so crystal clear that there's just no room for procedural errors or, accidental slip-ups.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Look at the operational impact here. Take the indictment deadline. If a prosecutor misses that 60-day window to file, boom, a mandatory rebuke. No excuses. This creates what you could call a zero-tolerance environment for procedural lapses. And let me tell you, that puts a ton of pressure on our presbytery clerks.
And then you've got Overture 3. This is all about preventing what the Standing Judicial Commission calls clear error. It basically puts a strict checklist in place for judicial commissions. You want to dismiss a charge? Fine, but you have to conduct a hearing. You have to evaluate the witnesses, and you have to write down your specific reasons for dismissal. No more just waving things away. It's all about transparency and making sure the process is followed to the letter.
Okay, so this demand for clarity and accountability, it doesn't just stop with the courts. It's bleeding right over into governance. The assembly is clearly moving away from a posture of, hey, we trust you, to one of, we trust you, but we're going to need to see the receipts. It's all about rigorous, codified audit and real oversight.
So what's with the big 10%? Well, this comes from Overture 6, and it's really about making the floor of the General Assembly more efficient. You know how sometimes one person can pull a single item from a big omnibus package for a full debate? This changes that. Now you'll need a 10% minority vote to do it. The idea is to stop bogging things down and only debate the stuff that a significant number of people actually have an issue with.
And man, this slide really shows you the massive shift in oversight we're talking about. Overture 11 is basically saying to Mission to North America, show us the data. How are these church plants actually doing? And then Overture 32, this is a huge shift. It says that all those agency and committee manuals are now subject to the same review as presbytery records. This is a big deal because it stops agency policies from flying under the radar and bypassing the will of the governed.
Okay, now we get to what is probably one of the most watched issues of the assembly. The whole question around defining the diaconate, what to do about titles, and the role of women in ministry. And, as you can imagine, there are a bunch of overtures coming at this from completely different directions. This chart does a really good job of laying out the different paths forward. On one side, you have overtures like 14, 34, and 36, which are trying to prohibit women deacons and strictly define titles. Then Overture 38 offers a sort of middle ground. It prohibits ordination for women, but allows for an unordained title, giving a lot of autonomy to the local church. But then you have Overture 37. And this one is the potential game changer. It proposes amending the Book of Church Order to directly allow for women deacons, and it puts the decision squarely in the hands of the local session, a major fork in the road.
So let's drill down on Overture 14 for a second, because if this thing passes, the practical impact is huge. It forbids a whole list of titles like deaconess or shepherdess or even minister for unordained people. The bottom line? Sessions are going to have to conduct a thorough clerical audit of their websites, their bulletins, their staff titles, everything, to make sure they are in full compliance.
And this effort to clarify roles extends all the way to the Lord's Supper. Overture 31 aims to draw a really sharp line around the keys of the kingdom. It mandates that only ruling elders can assist in distributing the elements. So it's making a clear distinction between the ordained act of actually handing the elements to communicants and, just passively passing the tray down the pew. Under this overture, that would no longer be a role for unordained members.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The overtures aren't just about the big picture denominational stuff. They're also digging into some key operational issues at the local church and presbytery level, focusing on things like pastoral health and congregational rights.
So you've got two big ones here on pastoral succession. Overture 39 is trying to end what some call the perpetual assistant pastor problem by recommending a 5-year term limit before a vote for associate. Gives a clear path. At the same time, Overture 1 actually lowers the bar for an assistant to become the senior pastor, but it still requires a supermajority vote from both the presbytery and the congregation. The goal for both is just a healthier, more orderly way to handle these big transitions in Christian love.
In this number, 60 days, this is a huge deal for our mission churches. Overture 17 makes this the mandatory notice period a presbytery has to give before it can dissolve a mission church. Why does this matter? It's all about due process. It explicitly protects the congregation's rights, giving them time to respond, to appeal, or even to withdraw and go to another denomination if they choose. It's a critical protection.
All right, let's zoom out now and pull all these different threads together. What does this whole shift toward high-fidelity governance actually mean in practical terms for you as an elder sitting in your session meeting?
I mean, this slide really says it all, doesn't it? The old model relied on flexibility and trust. It allowed for some gray areas in how we did things. But this entire slate of overtures is signaling a move to this new model, constitutional high fidelity. We're talking codified uniformity, bright-line rules, and very little room for error. It's all designed to mitigate legal and procedural risks.
So what's the so what for you? What do you need to take away from all this? Well, first, expect more operational friction and a higher liability for making procedural mistakes. Second, get ready for that clerical audit we talked about if certain overtures pass. You'll have to go through your church's communications with a fine-tooth comb. And third, you can probably expect longer, more complex presbytery meetings as everyone spends more time making sure every single constitutional box is checked.
And that really brings us to the fundamental question facing the 53rd General Assembly. This move toward high fidelity, it's intended to protect the denomination. But how will this new framework actually shape our life together, our peace, our purity, and maybe most importantly, our mission? That is the strategic question on the table, and the answer, well, it's going to be determined by your votes in the coming days.